welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us today for this. I'm Rob Love with Love & Company, and we will start off here with just some quick logistics. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with the way to ask questions on Zoom, but there is a specific Q&A box that you can click on the Zoom control panel and enter a question in there. We are going to hold questions until the end just to make sure we manage time and try and get done by that 1 o'clock target, and then we'll have the remaining time open for Q&A. Please do not put questions into the chat. We don't see them as well, can't manage them as well there, so please do put them into the Q&A link. Thank you. So our game plan for today, we'll start, of course, with introductions of our guest speakers. Then we're going to go through brief introductions of the communities that were involved in these projects: Westminster, Canterbury, Richmond, and Trinity Landing, which is part of Lutheran Services Carolinas. And then we'll shift into a number of illustrations of the types of market intelligence, market research that are needed to drive certain types of decisions through a project, and then how that information affected decision-making for these two projects. We'll do a quick wrap up at the end and then go into Q&A. So it is my pleasure to introduce our panel today. And just up front, as I have several times to them personally, but to all of you, just really would like to thank our panelists for taking the time to help put this together, organize their thoughts, share their thoughts. Some of you may have seen that there's been a couple of blogs that have been written, one with Kirby, one with Stacy and Russell. Stacy and Russell's may have just come out today, or it may even still be about to be published, but they've done a lot of work and a lot of time into bringing this information to all of you today, so we're very grateful to them for doing that. With that, I would like to let each of our speakers introduce themselves. We'll kind of go left to right across the screen here. So Stacy?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Nannery. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Westminster Canterbury in Richmond, Virginia. I have worked at Westminster Canterbury for over 35 years. I started in their Child Development Center. I've worked in human resources, also in assisted living. I moved into the sales and marketing office back in 2011 as a sales counselor initially. But right now I'm responsible for all sales and marketing efforts along with my team. We average about 55 to 60 move-ins a year. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'm Russell Gardner, Chief Financial Officer and Vice President here at Westminster Canterbury. I'm a colleague of Stacy's. I've been here just over 16 years.
Thank you. And Kirby?
Greetings, Kirby Nickerson. I'm Chief Financial Officer at Lutheran Services Carolinas, and one of our communities, as we'll be talking about, is Trinity Landing in Wilmington. I've been at Lutheran Services Carolinas just over 10 years and been in the senior living field since 1995.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm Sarah Montalto, Vice President of Strategic Services. I oversee the market intelligence team and work with communities as part of their master planning development process to represent the consumer perspective. I've been working in senior living marketing for nearly 20 years and have spent 7 of those with Love & Company.
Thank you. And I am Rob Love with Love & Company. If there are any newcomers to our webinar series today that aren't as familiar with Love & Company, we are a firm that does specialize in senior living marketing. We've been working in the field for about 30 years, and we provide a full range of marketing related services, from market research and consumer research to marketing planning to creative and lead generation and branding materials to sales consulting services. So and one of the things we really like to do is bring information and share it with the field and try and help all communities in the field do better. And that's what we're here to do today. So with that, kind of quick setting the stage for what our conversation is all about. We've all heard the saying, time is money. And in the senior living field, I'm not sure it's more true anywhere else than in a development planning process. Today, projects are just hugely expensive. Even what may seem to be a modest expansion and updating of a community could be easily $50 million. And to start up a new blue sky community could easily be $150 million or a lot more. And just even something as quote unquote small as a 6-month delay in $100 million project, just kind of picking that midpoint of that, assuming a 6% inflation rate, which of course is a little bit conservative in today's environment, that would cost the project $2.25 million. So say if pre-sales are running slower than expected and the timeline gets stretched out, that's a big bottom line cost to a project. Using maybe more realistic inflation figure for today's environment, 10%, that would actually increase the construction costs. And by the way, this inflation, it's just the hard construction costs, not all the other costs that get extended when a project's timeline continues. That would increase just the construction cost by almost $4 million. So money and time are very closely related in development projects. So our philosophy is do as much as you can upfront to truly understand the market so that that community or expansion can be planned and priced for maximum pre-sales to minimize that timeline while still enabling a community to achieve its financial objectives for the project. And also to be sure that the decision team, the leadership team in an organization has the information they need to make quick and accurate decisions along the way, because there are many points that come up, and we'll explore several of them from these projects today. So that's the theme of our session today. And before we go much further, I'm going to hand off to Stacy to just give us a little more of a sense of who Westminster Canterbury Richmond is and what led you to look at the current project.
Okay, thank you, Rob. So Westminster Canterbury Richmond was founded in 1971 by our Presbyterian and Episcopal churches. We opened our doors in 1975. We are currently home to approximately 800 residents in independent living, assisted living, memory support, and healthcare. We employ approximately 600 staff in a wide variety of positions. And we've had a history of success with strong brand recognition, an extensive wait list, sound finances. So with that said, we knew that we were, trying to plan for the future and move ahead. So when we started our strategic planning process back in 2016, we had 506 independent living units at that time. We're currently at 487. That's due to combining some smaller studio size apartments to make larger and more marketable accommodations. We've also had to take a few independent living units offline due to the expansion. But once the expansion is complete, we'll have a total of 605 independent living accommodations. So as we started this process, we identified some challenges, or what I would like to call opportunities. So we knew that our residents wanted larger and better fitness space as far as space, better space and equipment, really the kind of space that they're used to when as members of a country club or even a local fitness club. We also knew from a sales standpoint that we had very limited available inventory for our most popular resident sizes. So that is anywhere between 1,300 and 1,600 square footage. We also knew that we had limited space here on campus to expand, but we did recognize the opportunity to purchase some land adjacent to us.
As we began to look at the question of how and where to grow, we wrapped up our strategic planning process, which indicated that we wanted to grow, expand our mission. We had a very engaged board, an engaged management team. And as Stacy mentioned, we knew we had some opportunities in our wellness fitness space. And also with our spiritual center, we utilizing a very small chapel and decided to lead as a faith-based community. And we put our spiritual center as a first part of our expansion project. And then we also had a parking issue that we needed to deal with. So as we identified our opportunity, we quickly were at the point of feasibility, and we needed intel. We needed to know how to size our project, strength of market, and we needed to answer some questions. As Stacy mentioned, were we going to build on somewhat of a tight footprint? Were we going to acquire adjacent property, which was very expensive? Were we going to go into a second location? And we also considered the concept of satellite locations. We'll spend some time this afternoon sharing some of the key components of how we answered our question of where and how to grow.
Great, thank you. So Kirby, if you share a little bit about both Lutheran Services Carolinas and the Trinity Landing project.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Our senior services part of Lutheran Services Carolinas has many communities spread all over the state, serving seniors in North Carolina. As listed there, 9 communities, and various communities have skilled nursing, assisted living, and independent living components, including some affordable housing units at one of our locations. We also have home care and PACE programs that we've invested in. Again, our kind of mantra has been, if we can serve a senior in some other different capacity than we're doing now, we want to at least entertain that. Amongst our communities, though, most of them historically have been nursing home based. Many of the communities have been established for many years and have some components of maybe assisted living, but very few independent living. And so largely we have been dependent on governmental funding, Medicaid, Medicare, especially if you look at our nursing homes. Medicaid is over 50% overall in terms of our nursing home revenue stream. And so one of the issues that we wanted to try to address is how to diversify that and round out our communities wherever they were in North Carolina. We also have a component of our service that we call our child and family services that we have in both North and South Carolina, independent of our senior living services that we supply just in North Carolina. We have refugee resettlement services, foster care, group homes with folks that have needs for developmentally disabled individuals, or serve those individuals with traumatic brain injuries and the like. So that's an overview of Lutheran Services Carolinas and who we serve in both North and South Carolina. Our latest project, and the one we're going to focus in on here today, is Trinity Landing. It's on a site right on the inland coastal waterway in Wilmington, and you'll see in that photo, that's a pretty recent photo. Actually, we're planning to officially open our community this week, and between this week and next week, we're trying to finalize the details. But that is a fairly recent shot of just the hybrid villas portion of the campus, but you can see the inland waterway, and then you'll see the island, and then out beyond that island, you'll see the ocean. And so that was one of the selling points that we'll focus on in a little bit. Trinity Grove is our sister nursing home community with 100 beds. that is about 2 miles down the road. So it's not on the same site or contiguous property, but it is just down the road. And so that was a key factor in terms of having us develop this independent living campus right down the road. And we'll go into the decision making on where we wanted to build this additional independent living, because there was some extra acreage on the Trinity Grove campus as well. As you'll see in that bottom bullet point, the Trinity Landing project is consistent of a main building that has your traditional types of services, dining services, pool and exercise facilities. But then there is a hybrid villa component that you see here that makes its way down to the water and has great views. So it's basically two different styles of apartment homes that individuals have the choice of. For us over the years, the key challenge and key decision has been what is the market? We received a donation of the original parcel of the Trinity Landing site actually 40 years ago in 1982. And subsequent to that initial donation, we actually received a few other pieces of property or bought them to make a long, narrow slice of about 50 acres, of which 35 is buildable. But it was always a question of marketing because it's right on the coast. Could we draw enough from that primary market area to make a community like Trinity Landing feasible? We also looked at the component of, should we do a rental community? Should we do fee for service? And when we looked at the market overall, it seemed like the fee for service or rental community was not our best option, but to look at more of the traditional model of entry fees. The price point, obviously a key at any type of project that we develop or anybody develops. This was a greenfield project. So could we support the types of amenities and services that we thought should be on the campus with the entry fees and monthly fees? So that was a key point as to whether the community like this could be handled. And then the last key component there, as I mentioned earlier, we did have additional acreage right next to our Trinity Grove nursing home site, and which was the better site to build on, that nursing home site or this blank slate right on the inland waterway.
Great, thank you, Kirby, and appreciate that background. So now we're going to start going into a couple of different phases of the project and what to look for and examples of how information gathered about the market has really shaped each of these projects. First, I want to give some kudos here to our friends at SFCS Architects, who actually were the architects of both of these projects. So I've taken the liberty of borrowing one of the slides they like to use to share to talk about the impact of decisions on a major expansion or startup community over time, the cost impact of decisions. Many of you have probably seen something like this before, but the short version is in those beginning phases of the project, that's when you really have the most control over the costs. And that's the decisions made there are most important in shaping the costs of the project into the future. If wrong decisions are made early that have to be changed later, the cost of making those changes can become quite large at that point. So our focus is always, what can we bring to the table at the beginning of a project to make sure the decisions made are the best ones and the right ones? So certainly at this very early stage of master planning for an expansion or a startup community, we have two concurrent goals. First, we have to plan something that's financially viable. And second, it has to be something that's acceptable to the market. And as obvious as those two things are, too often when projects struggle, it's because too much emphasis was placed on, oh, what will it take to make it financially viable, without validating that those assumptions would actually work in the marketplace. So we have to keep both of those goals equally in mind in projects. So the drivers of this are very simple things like of the financial viability, market acceptance are how many residences do we build? How big should they be? What type and what should their pricing be? And those are very interrelated items as if you're aiming for a moderate price point, you can't go with really large residences. You have to keep that size down. And then how much space can we put into amenities? Those are really key decision points for planning, early stage planning. So what we need to be able to make the right decisions is not just a quick market study that says, yes, the penetration rate is so-and-so, and it allows for growth. Is we really need to understand the competitive environment, the consumer environment, the demographics, and to be able to put all that together into a positioning strategy for the expansion of the startup community. So we really need a detailed market demand analysis, a detailed competitive positioning analysis, and a detailed competitive pricing. With that information in hand, we're really prepared to address a number of the issues that can come up during the course of a project. So with that as background, we're going to walk through some of the decisions and challenges, or Stacy said opportunities, that came up with each of these two projects. And we will start with Trinity Landing. And just as a quick refresher of what Kirby just said, a lot of the key challenges were, is there market depth for an entrance fee community? What product and price point would be competitive, and which site? Go on the donated site or on the existing site with a nursing home? So those are some of the key things we were looking to answer. So with that, Kirby, if you would talk us through a little bit of your planning process and how you pulled the team together.
Sure. One of the key points that key decisions that we needed to make at the beginning was just even how to bring a team together. For us, we decided it was most important to do a design to build type of process instead of simply designing it without all these parties at the table, and then at the end just simply putting it out for a bid for construction companies and moving on from there. We felt the former was most important for us. These are the team members we brought together, and what it allowed us to do as we went through the process, which spanned months into probably more like a year or two, is that as we came across different details, we could quantify them. We could make sure from a marketing standpoint, things seemed to be targeted on the right direction. From a construction standpoint, we had all the inputs together at the table, and it made us fairly nimble in terms of being to react to changes in potential directions as they came up. Because as you know, if you've gone through this process before, it's not a simple process, but if you have all the players at the table, we just felt that was the best methodology to move forward with. Some of the key decisions we've already outlined, but here's a little bit deeper dive in terms of what we wanted to do. And we did wrestle with this for quite some time. Did we want to use the adjacent property to Trinity Grove, our nursing home? That would mean every element of this new independent living would be on one contiguous campus, close to the existing nursing home. It seemed to potentially have a little bit stronger market depth. The appeal, the type of community we thought it would be would probably be more moderate as listed there, simply because of its location. The option 2, donated waterfront site, it has the higher price point. The market depth initially did not seem as strong maybe as the Trinity Grove site, but in terms of being more of an upscale community, we thought it had more potential. And as we went down through, and as we'll talk about in a little bit, when we went through some more of the focus groups and deeper market studies, it seemed like the entry fees and monthly fees, the financial aspect of the community could support the amenities that we wanted to put in that campus. And as our CEO, Ted Goins, would consistently say, and let me show you the water. So we thought being on that waterfront site right on the inland coastal waterway was just a key marketing piece that we just couldn't ignore. It may have some intangible qualities to it, but we felt it would really bolster the sales and marketing of that community to be on that site, even though it was a few miles down the road from our Trinity Grove campus.
Right, and if I may elaborate on just a couple things there, Kirby, because we may have some people looking at this chart and going, wow, you took the higher risk project with less market depth to it. That's all centered around the price point, because as a price point of a project increases, the potential market for it decreases, just from a sheer affordability perspective. So that's why we rated the waterfront site as a little higher risk than the nursing home site. But just reiterating what Kirby shared, felt that competitive advantage was so strong that it would really enable us to support those higher price points and have a more financially viable community. So that's how, from a project team member perspective, we looked at that. And this is supported by a number of the market insights that, when we took this deep dive into the market, that we saw there's clearly an opportunity for growth in the market in senior living residences, as the typical age and income qualified market was projected to increase almost 20% over the next 5 years. That's pretty significant growth. And when we looked at home values, and particularly the fact that everybody else was rental, we really did feel that there was a unique opportunity to position an entrance fee community, particularly with these advantages in the market, mainly because in most cases, the entrance fee upfront creates a lower monthly service fee. So in many ways, this entrance fee product could be less expensive to people than moving into a rental community. But the one thing, and I know Kirby will touch on this again in a minute, but Wilmington did not have excessively high home values. In fact, it was slightly less than the US average at the time. So that really meant that we couldn't just look at something like a high refund contract and say, we're going to go this way to get that money. We knew we had to make the project work on more of a declining balance project. So Kirby, back to you.
So you can see some of the more specifics on the project. We were able to get a lot more square footage than potentially the Trinity Grove site could accommodate. The declining balance fee was roughly equal to the average home value. The refund for 90% refund entrance fee was higher than the home value, and you can see where the average monthly fee was relative to the Trinity Grove site. And for us, we felt when we were doing the financials, if we could get that declining balance entry fee kind of in a sweet spot, we felt over the long run that pricing that appropriately, as opposed to 50% or 90% refund, pricing the declining balance in a sweet spot was going to be beneficial over the long run for the community at Trinity Landing. So this is where we ended up. We'll have some subsequent slides that will get into a little bit more of the details of how we got there, but we have a total of 208 independent living residents, as mentioned there, 139 to begin with, and on a subsequent slide, we'll go through that transition. You can see the delineation between the main apartment building there and then the 84 villas, of which you've seen pictures of. And down on that bottom right, you can see a picture of what is actually there right now. That's, again, a recent picture of the main building and the fitness center, et cetera. We've hovered around 88 to 90% recently, and we've actually moved in some residents beginning in June. Some of the hybrid villas, we were able to get certificates of occupancy early because they were finished. And so we were able to move in residents early, which from a feasibility study, we always like to beat those numbers of the fill-up rate. And so that has been a plus. And actually between this week and next week, we'll have multiple move-ins as we open up the main campus, that 124 unit apartment building, which is the main part of campus. There you'll see just some slides of the campus. That center part is the pavilion that is right out on, right near the water. As I mentioned earlier, we ended up with a piece of property that was right around 50 acres, 35 of which is buildable as it transitions from the roadway down to the intercoastal waterway. It slopes down. Actually, none of the community is in a floodplain except for this building, which is in the center there. You can see built on stilts. That does exist today. It's going to be a great place to do functions, receptions, maybe even a few weddings. We do have a pool and a fitness area, as well as dining services and the regular amenities that you would expect in a higher end community like Trinity Landing. This is a rendering just of the campus overall. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen is the main building. It kind of meanders down. You can see it's a long, narrow piece of property highlighted by those red boundary lines. To the top of your screen, you'll see other buildings. That's actually the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, one of their maritime buildings. And to the bottom left corner is an adjacent neighborhood of single family homes. And as you meander down, you'll see to the upper left the notation of the path to the coastal pavilion, which we saw on the previous slide.
All right, thank you for that overview, Kirby. Sarah, I will hand off to you to work with Stacy and Russell and share the information on Westminster Canterbury.
Sure. For Westminster Canterbury, going back to that question of, do I have slide control off? There we go. Is the how and where to grow. And for my involvement in this process, it was most exciting to me to see a community that really wanted to explore how their organization could best grow in the market. And after strong market feasibility showing there was opportunity, whether they wanted to expand on campus, a satellite location, or even a more distant location in the market. So now we're going to talk through the results of the consumer research and what that process looked like as they really explored with an open mind how to move forward. So Russell's going to talk through about the location.
Yeah, with some help of some of our trustees, we were able to get some good introductions into some land developers. In the Richmond, Virginia area, we refer to that as the RVA area. In the western part of Henrico County, it's a very hot area, lots of residential growth, a tremendous amount of retail growth. So that was an exciting site to go and take a look at. That would be in the upper left of this slide. We went across the river over into Chesterfield County and looked at some land. City of Richmond, we were considering a satellite community with the walkabout concept. It'd be nice to be in a neighborhood where we could walk to local groceries, entertainment centers, and what have you. So we looked very hard at the City of Richmond for potential satellite location. Long story short, at the end of the day, we decided to stay on our main campus and go ahead and pay some high per acreage land costs. So we acquired about 10 acres of adjacent property from an old retail site. Fortunately, in the RVA area, all of these sectors, the counties, the cities, they're all growing. And we're seeing a lot of growth in age and income eligible prospects. So good news. I believe we were experiencing move-ins, which traditionally had been from our primary 8 zip codes, and that number had started increasing, and we were seeing move-ins from approximately 15 zip codes around the RVA area. Well, at the end of this process, as I mentioned, we decided to buy the land, and this process also helped us make a determination about how many units are we talking about, and the target range that was identified was 100 to 130 new units.
Okay. Thank you, Russell. So we conducted 5 focus groups involving around 250 participants, including those on our waiting list. So we presented them with several housing options, and based on market study, consumer research, and overall trends that we were seeing with our own prospects, we really migrated to the hybrid home concept that we are actually referring to as village apartments. So certainly if we would have had additional land, we would have built more homes like you see here on the far bottom right. So we conducted these, a series of consumer research events designed to answer several key questions, including how our participants felt about potential site locations, different types of residential living options, contract types, and services as far as health, and in addition to healthcare offerings. And as Russell concluded, we heard very loud and clear from our prospects that they really wanted a full service community here at 1600 Westbrook Avenue to have a full continuum of services. So there was some consideration for an off-site healthcare center, but fortunately we had the capacity to add additional independent living accommodations without having to expand our healthcare center.
Thank you, Stacy. So one of the things that, like you said, that people really either wanted to be on the existing campus or a short distance away when talking to the wait list and lead base, that those were the first 2 choices. And when asked to do a second choice, those responses really just reversed. But the same thing also happened when talking to the purchase list, that the top options were that ability to be on the current campus with access to the amenities. And I think one of the things here is just speaks to the strong reputation that Westminster Canterbury has in its market, that when people want to be at Westminster Canterbury and a part of it, that it really is that main campus location. But overall, between the market insights, the consumer insights, they really showed that there was strong demand to add up to 150 residents on the existing campus, that it's supported with the growth rates. In fact, that because of the increase in the aging home qualified senior population, that if Westminster Canterbury didn't expand, they'd actually end up with a lower percentage of market capture rate. And that there was such a strong interest in the wait list that we expected a faster pre-sale process, because there were so many of those wait list members who knew that they would not get some of their first choice residents on the existing campus. So they wanted other opportunities to move in sooner. So overall, that led to growing on the existing campus and moving forward with the purchase of that adjacent land.
Very similar to Kirby and his organization, we assembled our team. We had been working with our financial analyst, Clifton Larson Allen, for years, and Love & Company. looking at the feasibility of this project. We went through an RFP process for both the architectural services and the construction manager, construction partner that ended up being a joint venture between two constructions, and we refer to them as the Gilbane Henderson group. A lesson learned here, we decided a little bit late in the process to bring on an owner's rep. Our project is very large. We all have day jobs, and we decided to bring in a company referred to as JLL. We concluded early on that we probably should have brought them in on the front end to help us with some of the RFP work and just some of the entire design and conceptual planning. One of the first things that this big group did was to get together and look at renaming our project. We had been using terms like this is going to be Westminster Canterbury's Phase 3.0. And then we had a real attractive title called Project 2020. And then after a meeting, couple of sessions, the team came up with the title of Vibrancy. And so we refer to this as our Vibrancy project going forward.
Thank you, Russell. So yes, we came up with that name because Westminster Canterbury Richmond, our vision is for everyone to live a very vibrant life and live life to the absolute fullest. So hence the term vibrancy. So some of the highlights of the expansion is a new Vital Living Center. So state-of-the-art fitness and aquatics. It will include a walking track, expanded cardio and strength equipment. Also, the new aquatic center will have 3 bodies of water because we heard from our residents as well as prospects, you know, if you enjoy lap swimming, you do not want to swim in a warmer body of water. So we'll have a lap pool, a warmer pool for exercise, and then a hot tub. We'll also have a new salon and spa with stylists, a barber, and massage therapy. We are also in the process of renovating our dining space. So we are creating 4 separate dining venues, incorporating feedback from our residents. We are creating a new coffee bar and lounge space that you see there in the middle. Also a small dining space featuring farm to table inspired meals. So our spiritual center that has already opened, a few years ago, and the parking deck opened in April of this year. So we needed to relocate where staff park. Hence, we built the parking deck and then we're able to break ground, and we have on some of the new village apartments. So we are adding 118 new independent living apartments in 2 areas. You'll see the top picture. The building to the far right are our Vitality apartments. And then the 4 buildings that you see at the bottom right are our village apartments. So we started pre-sales in late August of 2021 with a goal of reaching 70% by August of 22. So thanks to the great work of our sales team, they reached the 70% reserved back in March, and happy to say that we recently hit 100% reserved.
I'd just like to add, Stacy, that on this slide, we're looking at our final results. Throughout our planning and pre-sale process, we had a phasing concept that we were considering whether or not we should bring on all 4 of the buildings. And we really concluded that the answer was 3. But given the strong results from Stacy and her team, help with Love & Company, it was decided to move ahead with the fourth building as a result of the strong pre-sales.
Thank you, Russell. So what you'll see next is it's the site map of our campus. Everything that is not circled is our existing campus. So you will see Russell mentioned earlier that we acquired about 10 acres from an adjacent retail space. So you'll see 17 and 18 at the top right. Those are our 4 village apartments. So there will either be 18 or 20 apartments in each building. And then 17 is a clubhouse that we'll be able to utilize for all of our residents. And then on the far left, you will see 15 is our new Vital Living Center. So that incorporates our new fitness and aquatics, the salon and spa. 16 are the new Vitality apartments. So there will be 42 of those. And then you'll see highlighted number 5 is just giving you a point of reference. Our garden apartments already exist, but they'll be adjacent to the new Vitality apartments.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually going to go back a slide, and I think this will get touched on later, but I just wanted to bring it up now while building on something that Russell shared and while you see this diagram in front of you. You may recall that Russell a couple moments ago said we decided to go initially with just 3 of those new villa apartment buildings over in the right-hand circle. To be honest, we were all very concerned. Maybe I shouldn't say very concerned. We had a reasonable degree of concern about how fast those new villas would sell, because they're actually look at how far the 2 circles are apart from each other on a large campus. So it's quite a distance from those villa apartments over to the the new amenity spaces. And even the dining is in the yellow building marked number 1 on this map. So a new type of residence for the campus, a distance that was pretty far away. We really wanted to be conservative in the planning there and started with 3. But as they've shared, that went a good bit better than the conservative estimates. So I think we'll touch on that a little bit more, but I just wanted to share that while we were on that map. All right, so now we cheated a little bit in that last section because we were talking about the conceptual planning process and deciding what to build and where to build it and what came out of that planning process. And then we showed you photos of things that were already built or really extensively designed, just to give a flavor to it. But the reality is, when you finish that conceptual planning process, you just have like boxes marked out on paper. The plans are not to that degree of detail at all. There's still a lot more work to be done, which we'll cover in an upcoming section. But at the end of conceptual planning, you have a project that works financially because everybody's worked together and brought the numbers together. But what we don't know is if the market will accept it or not. So what we strongly recommend, and we'll share an example of this with Trinity Landing, is that prior to moving forward, remember that graph that says it's much less expensive to make changes early than it is later. So let's go early out to the market and take the concept that we're looking at bringing to the market, including pricing, and share it with them and get their reaction. That's consumer validation. The way we do that is through a series of consumer research events. And like Stacy shared, we may often have 35 to 50 households in an event. We may have 60, 70 people there. And it's very interactive. Think of it like a focus group on steroids. We present a lot, we let people talk and provide their feedback, but we also have these electronic responders. So we're able to ask a series of specific questions and get quantitative results as well. And that's the key benefit of this kind of research, is we get both the quantitative kind of data you can get from a survey and the qualitative kind of data you get from really enabling people to be able to talk and share their emotional feedback to things with us. The way these events work is you could almost think of it as a sales presentation without any kind of sales closing, because it is a research event. But it starts with just an overview of what is a life plan community, then shares the sponsor, give a little bit of information there, go into the plans for what's coming, the residences, the amenities, the services. And then ultimately, when you've painted this really complete picture of what's coming and people understand that, then we go into pricing and contracts. And the ultimate thing we're looking to learn there is the market willing to pay this price for this product at this location? Will they buy? And so it provides really critical feedback for the design and development team if there are things that need to change for a project to be successful. Now, Trinity Landing was a truly exceptional case. Remember, we shared some concerns. We thought there was a higher risk going with the waterfront site because it would be a higher price point, maybe more limited market depth for that. Yet there was enough excitement about this project during the research that almost 60% felt the entrance fees were within reason, and almost 70% felt the monthly fees were within reason. Now, maybe those don't feel like high percentages to you, but Sarah and I, after having done a lot of this kind of research, this is really positive, because most people, when they come into a research event like this, particularly in a market like Wilmington, North Carolina, where entrance fee communities didn't exist, really, there was only one, and it was kind of out of the primary market area. People don't understand the whole entrance fee, monthly fee concept. And it's like, wait, I have to pay for it and I rent it type of thing. So to get this positive a reaction to the pricing was really encouraging. And the research also enabled us to confirm the mix of amenities and services, confirmed that Trinity Grove really did have a positive reputation. And one of the key success measures is, of all the people that attend these, how many leave wanting to stay in touch with the project and wanting to learn more about it? It was more than 3/4 in this case. So it provided a lot of confidence to the development team that we were on the right track. In fact, Kirby, I believe it gave you, from the financial perspective, an even greater amount of confidence.
Yeah, this was a key point at our project development, is to have these focus groups, because up until then, as Rob mentioned, you've got a lot of great drawings. Russell can confirm that he and I can sit in our office and make the project work by making the numbers add up. But the reality is, our residents, prospective residents out there, willing to pay the entry fees, pay the monthly fees, and enter into your community from a resident perspective and marketing perspective, does it work? So it's an important element to have this as a linchpin as you move forward. At this point, we were kind of teetering back and forth on price points, and I think these sessions gave us the confidence to be able to move forward and say, okay, we feel like there's strong enough demand for this type of project, that we want to plan it right. We want to make sure that we engineer it right, because as that chart that was shown earlier underlies, the more changes you make towards the end of the project, the more costly they are, and in some cases is just a game changer, because if you're trying to change an HVAC system, for instance, from one style to another, that might mean the whole project needs to be re-engineered. And so we wanted to make reasonable decisions up front. These focus groups gave us the confidence in the pricing to be able to move forward with the design that we were all comfortable with, that would create the type of community we were looking for. And overall, it gave us an excitement about basically opened the door to be able to collect the priority deposits. And we had been working for quite a while from a marketing standpoint to be able to get people on the list. And as soon as we opened up the door, so to speak, and allowed 10% deposits, I think all that upfront work was really did pay off, because we had quite a few depositors sign on in a very short time period, and that just gave us the momentum to move forward with the project, and a confidence in the planning process that we had undergone.
All right. We have a couple more steps in the process. I know we're pretty close to 1 o'clock now, but we will keep going to 1:30. That's our time window. We may have a little less time for Q&A than we thought. But one thing, if anybody does need to duck away around 1 o'clock, the most popular question is always, will the slides be available, after the presentation? Well, we actually go one step better than that with our webinars. We will send the full recording out, not only to everyone who's here today listening, but to everyone who registered. So if you found things helpful here today, you can share it with the rest of your organization as well. So at this stage, we have our concept down, we've tested it with the market, and we know either that, yes, it's viable as is, or we need to make some additional changes. Now we jump into really fleshing out the design details and really going into making the whole thing work. And one of the key roles marketing plays at this stage of the process is we're really the ones representing the consumer. If you think about an expansion project, almost everybody else at the table is cost, construction, everybody else. But marketing representing consumer represents revenue for the project. So it's really important that that consumer perspective on residence design, finishes, all those types of things was really brought to the table during this phase. So Sarah, if you could walk us through that with Westminster Canterbury.
Sure, and I know Stacey's going to join in a minute, but one of the most exciting things for me with this project is how this process works, with everyone having a seat at the table truly, not just on paper, and the openness with which the team worked together to really make sure that this project was really going to meet Westminster Canterbury's needs long term, really serve their residents well, serve their team members well, and serve the greater community well.
Yeah. So as Sarah said, when we started this process in 2016, it was very important to have everyone around the table. So that included our board, our residents board, our management team, the sales team when it came to looking at floor plans and pricing. So we were dedicated to assuring that the plans that we were making would, number one, benefit our current residents and then prepare for our future residents. So some of the things that came up in talking with its staff and residents, and with the Vital Living Center, our wellness team had been gathering information for several years. They spent months researching, designing, visiting other communities and facilities. They talked with current residents. They also spoke with folks on our waiting list. They were very involved in the meetings when we were meeting directly with the architects, and we used resident survey information to help us plan. So as I mentioned earlier, it was loud and clear. We have some folks that want that therapeutic pool, but we had folks saying, I'm used to swimming laps and I work out at a local fitness center. When we were looking at floor plans, we heard loud and clear that lighting was very important. So you'll see this is one of our new apartments. lots of natural light. They wanted an open concept. So that was very important to our prospects. We keep going. I'll turn it over to Russell.
Yes, thank you, Stacy. We aligned our financial objectives with our mission charge, and that was to serve more seniors. You heard Stacy a few moments ago mention we had a very strong wait list, or over 1,000 folks. And even if you divided that by 3 to get it to a ready list, we felt like we had a ready list of over 300. So the indications were with us that we were headed in the right direction. The financial planning came back strong, and our board adopted the term accretiveness. And we felt like that the project was accretive to all of our stakeholders, the primary stakeholders being our current resident population, our future residents, and it was also accretive to our operation results, be it financial results and satisfaction. We were very fortunate when we started this, and it continues today, that we have a very engaged resident population, and knock on wood, satisfaction scores are very high. We relied on 3 or 4 primary financial metrics: our debt service coverage ratio, days cash on hand, net operating margin, and cash flows. Those were the metrics that we used to gauge the financial feasibility. Our organization decided to leverage some of our balance sheet strength. We're very blessed. We were able to make an equity contribution. Our group, our finance committee, decided to put a little pressure on our DSCR performance. Typically, we were running in the 3.5 range. We decided to push that down to a low of 1.9 or 2. The financial modeling indicated that there would be recovery after a stabilized occupancy and about 3 years afterwards. So we felt very good about the financial objectives of being accretive for our organization. Now, as we got into the process, there were challenges. Our construction cost, now we are building a very large wellness and aquatic center here. That was over $50 million. And so, but the cost of construction and planning was somewhere around $120 million. By the time we got through all the scope creep and all the desires of our planners, we were easily in the $130 million range. And then when the contractor got involved and we put it out, but started the work on our contract, unfortunately, it came back with a 30% increase. And so that caused us to question a couple of things. We wanted to take a hard look at the scope creep, which we did, and we were able to pull out $6 to $10 million. Fortunately, our results from our marketing efforts were very strong. We were seeing very, very strong pre-sales, and we were right at the point where we were about to start the 10% deposit phase, and we were just feeling very strong. We relied on our contingencies to deal with the financial challenges. We used up some of our cushions, but at the end of the day, we did adjust our financial feasibility because of the cost of capital went up on us 100 basis points. And so there were some challenges, and they all came in right at the very end, but the team stayed together and worked through them.
Great, thank you all. So Kirby, your project also went through some significant evolution over time. Could you share that and some of the decision points along the way there?
Sure. You can see in that first column of numbers, early 2016, that was at the beginning stages of really formulating the project, where it would be, what it would look like. We knew we had to get a significant number of residents to get some type of economy of scale. We started out at that 125 figure, and you can see the weighted numbers down below. As we went and tried to solidify that, it's a center section of numbers, a start of pre-sales of 2017, we had settled in on the number 139. We had ruled out cottages for various reasons, some of them cost, some of them space, I believe. But the weighted average entry fee had gone up, and the average monthly service fee had gone up as well based on what we were looking at the time. And so we were excited to be able to kind of nail down where we were. As time went on and we were looking at some more challenges, as Russell talked about, as they all come up throughout the process, we realized that a lot of our site work that we needed to get done, or nearly all of it, had to be done in the initial phase, because ultimately, even with that 139 number in the center of that page, we knew we were going to have some type of second phase to get up over the 200 mark. So at that point, we played around with some numbers because site work had to be done in that first phase, regardless of whether we were going to build the units now or later. And so we were able to pull in some more billet hybrid units to get to that 184 number in that last column. You can see the weighted averages also went up. That obviously helped us from a financial standpoint, make sure the project was solid and viable. And we focused really in on the declining balance contract, as that last row of figures delineates. We're actually up well over that 80% figure just because of the way we priced it. And as I mentioned earlier, felt that over the long run, that declining balance contract for our entry fee would be most beneficial for the community. You can see here our strong pre-sales at the very beginning of the project, which was great. It remained strong even through COVID. We had done our offering statement, and actually our CEO and myself, Ted Goins, had made some trips to do some sales presentations, one to Chicago, and we're in the midst of going to Boston when COVID happened. And literally within less than a week, a matter of a few days, our project went from viable and ready to get financed to no marketability at all, no financing available. So we obviously had to switch gears, but during that time, we were very excited that as we came out of a couple of years of COVID, we basically tread water on our reserved units through that time, which was remarkable from our standpoint. And because we remained in that strong position of sales, it allowed us to consider adding on the final number of units, that last bullet point there to the left, of 24 units to round out the entire project at that 208 number. And so that allowed us to continue the construction and still remain on target for the overall opening, which is basically now, end of August. So we were able to include those additional 24 units. Those were in the center of campus, so we were able to minimize any disruption from future construction as we pulled that back in to just fold it in our current construction. And those units were the ones that were most marketable, had the highest demand, so we felt confident in shifting gears and adding those in because of our strong sales throughout the project.
All right, thank you. And the last leg of this journey is, just looking at some facets of, getting ready for that 10% deposit period. And Westminster Canterbury had some unique challenges along those lines. And Sarah, walk us through that, please.
Yeah, in some ways, I feel like it almost becomes preparing for pre-sales that quickly turned into a COVID tale. This is a team that really spent a lot of time and effort in planning for the initial launch of the priority deposit phase in terms of how to roll out to the wait list, their lead base, to the external market. And then we quickly were impacted by COVID.
Right. Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, so we We're all excited about the project. We launched the priority deposit phase to our wait list in October of 2019 with what was initially 98 independent living residences and the new Vital Living Center. So we had a very strong response from them. We got through the holidays. We started back in January of 20, introducing the project to the greater community. And we all know what happened in March of 20, so we had to pause.
So one of the fortunate things about the timing of that pause was that during that pause, Love & Company was doing some research with other communities that we work with in terms of their wait list and lead base, and really looking at what were marketing strategies, what were sales strategies, how did they need to change to respond and react to COVID in ways that teams could still communicate with their prospects, move things forward, because while we knew that this project was taking a temporary pause, that it was quickly becoming apparent that COVID was going to be around for a while, and we wanted to figure out how we could work together to move things forward so that the teams could continue to work their prospects. And the biggest thing that came up was the usage of whether it was Zoom webinars, Skype, using Facebook, FaceTime, and really still having that video connection and using that as part of the engagement strategy to continue to communicate beyond just a phone call or email.
Right. So thank you, Sarah. So for those of us who work in sales and really anyone who works in this industry, we know that it's all about relationships and connectivity. So how are we, we sat back and said, okay, we have this goal of reaching 300. We needed 300 priority depositors. So how are we going to do that if we can't have anyone here on campus? So we all had to adapt to new ways of doing things. And Sarah referenced, the virtual, the FaceTime, the Zoom, but we did some home visits, we did meal deliveries. We introduced a texting service called ZipWhip. And, we continued with traditional ways of sending, connecting with their prospects, whether that be a birthday card, a fall card. We started with webinars, and, this was a big adjustment for all of us, including myself, because I was very used to standing up in front of a group of people and being able to look at them in the audience and how were they responding. And you didn't have that. But fortunately, we found that when we had a great response to the webinars, we found that if we were talking about factual topics, instead of social, fun events, if they were informative, we had a great response. We also recorded each webinar. We sent it to everyone who registered, but then it also gave the sales team another tool to use with prospects. So we also implemented Your Tour, which is a personalized platform for senior living prospects. So I must say that our team here was a little skeptical about how is this going to work. So a lot of training and brainstorming was done with the team. We practiced using Your Tour with each other. We practiced it with Love & Company, and we implemented changes based on the feedback that we heard from our prospects. So fortunately, our results were very good. Sales exceeded their goals. We achieved 62% of our 10% deposits in just over 2 months. As Russell had mentioned earlier, we started the pre-sales, and we were all a little skeptical or apprehensive, or whatever term you want to use, with how the market was going to respond to these village apartments. And even our own sales team, I think, had some reservations, and happy to say that the market responded. We ended up adding 20 more residents. But again, we reached our 70% pre-sales early, and we have, on the same token, we had all that going on, and we still were able to maintain around 94% occupancy for our existing residences.
And the thing about your existing campus, with being so large, with about 500 independent living residents, that's a lot of existing residences that you still needed to keep full and deal with the same challenges of older, smaller inventory that looks very different than what we were selling with the expansion. And the team really has just done a phenomenal job with being able to keep all the balls in the air and exceed goals.
All right. So the key takeaways for what we're looking to share today, hopefully you've heard these points throughout, but really it's not just about Trinity Landing in Westminster Canterbury. Over the last 7 years or so, since development really started back up pretty strongly, as communities and organizations came out of the financial crisis period, when marketing and sales have been at the table from the start, really looking and bringing to the planning process that perspective of the consumer, the detailed demographics, the research, as we did with Trinity Landing, the consumer research to validate things, those projects have consistently been highly successful, and have all exceeded the pre-sales goals. And you see the list of them there. There also been several times when we've been brought into a project after all the planning's been done, when no one has, from a marketing perspective, was really looking at those things and doing those things. I don't mean this maybe quite as pejoratively as it sounds, but Kirby said, yeah, he and Russell could sit in the room and play with the numbers until everything looks good. Well, sometimes it feels like that's the way projects are planned. Well, we have to only offer 90% contracts, 90% refundable contracts, because that's the only way the project works. And then it turns out that 90% refundable contracts are priced almost twice as high as home values in the market, and it substantially reduces the market potential for it, and that leads to pre-sales issues, which leads to cost increases. So it's just really important that far more than just spreadsheets are used to evaluate the effectiveness and the validity of plans. And if you follow this process, it dramatically increases the odds that projects will be successful. So with that, once again, I would very much like to thank Kirby and Russell and Stacy, as well as Sarah from our team, for all the time that they've put into preparing for today and sharing their thoughts and sharing their insights. We hope it's been very helpful, and we welcome your questions. Again, please go into the Q&A part of the control panel, and you can type your questions in there. First question is for Stacy. What is the size of your sales team, and how did you set parameters for their work, such as required numbers of calls, appointments, etc., to achieve goals? And if I may, Stacy, I might even expand on that myself and say, and did those kind of parameters and goals that you set evolve, from just calls and appointments? Did you measure things a different way after COVID? Stacy?
Yes, so I'll try to answer all the questions. So the sales team, since we've been in existence, had 2 sales counselors, and because of the expansion, we hired a third sales counselor who started in January of 20, so right before COVID. So, you know, we did have to change some of the ways that we handled everything. I will say that our team was very accustomed to not having to really reach out to people because the phone would ring. Well, COVID hit and the phone wasn't ringing. So we did have to set some goals as far as, you know, looking at the lead base. We knew we had over 1,000 individuals on our waiting list. So we had to kind of discipline ourselves to have goals of reaching out to a certain number of those in the lead base. And Love & Company was very instrumental in helping us to do that. So, you know, it was time consuming with the doing all the webinars during the priority deposit phase. But we got through it. And then, you know, the 10%, phase, when we started that last August, it was very labor intensive for them, but they were able to manage their time, and we set aside a certain number of appointments that we would do each day for the 10% depositors, those meetings, recognizing that we still had to keep the existing community filled. So it was really being organized and scheduling their calendar, and it's all worked well. So I hope I answered that was several questions within that question.
All right, thank you, Stacy. And Stacy, I want to ask a follow-up to you as well. So you had shared, and I had shared, and several of us, I think, did, that the village apartments, that there were some concerns about those, you know, given their location, new product, and everything, you know, just how well they would sell. What was it about those that you think, why did those turn out to be as successful sales-wise as they did?
Right. Well, I think a couple of things. I think, you know, within our current waiting list, we have a large waiting list, or fairly large, for homes. We only have 29 freestanding homes. We call them homes and not cottages. So we knew that even people on our current waiting list, we were probably not going to get to their name. So it was very attractive to those who were interested in a home. It was also attractive to those, again, on our waiting list who were interested in one of the larger apartments, again, knowing that with our current inventory, we sometimes tell people it could be 3 to 5 years before we get to your name. So kind of that, you know, supply and demand type thing. I think with the village apartments, we've seen our prospects be a little younger in age. They like having that distance from the community. Yes, I can come over and have a meal. I can come over to work out in the, you know, the fitness or aquatic space, but I like my independence and I like having some privacy. So again, we were very pleasantly surprised at how well our waiting list and then just our lead base responded.
All right, thank you. And we're closing in on our 1:30 target. So final question here, Kirby, is going to come your way. You know, Russell, when you all described the teams that you assembled for this, you know, Russell noted that, you know, if they had to do it over again, they would have, you know, brought in a project manager. Everybody has their day jobs, and they would have brought that in earlier. But you really, you know, Lutheran Services Carolinas, you really pretty much self-managed it, and you actually did an awful lot of the financial modeling. How did that work for you? Were there any lessons learned in that self-management process? If you had another project to do today, would you do it the same way?
Well, as Russell said, we all have our day jobs. So I would just make sure if you are going to undertake one or all of those components because you think you have the expertise, just to make sure you have the time as well. The way we were set up, we have had several different projects over the past 5 to 10 years. We built 4 different nursing homes from ground up in a 5-year period. And so we had already had some project folks dedicated to seeing those through, and were able to essentially bring that expertise that we had generated over those years and apply it to Trinity Landing, and have our own internal project manager who really had worked on one of those other projects, actually Trinity Grove down there in Wilmington. From the financial standpoint, I did a lot of the preliminary work, but as Russell noted, as you get to a certain point, you need to, from a feasibility standpoint, do have to hire somebody to help in the process. We hired Clifton Larson Allen as well. But during those initial stages, I think it was very beneficial, especially as we came up on issues, whether it's cost or marketing, whatever the case may be. It was helpful that I had a basic model in place to try to quantify those changes up front to help give us directions and say, yeah, this looks like it's feasible. Or after we did the market studies, incorporating in the potential tweak on entry fees and monthly fees to help the financial viability of the project. All those were real important early on. I would just make sure that the team members you have that are already a part of your organization do have the ability and the time to dedicate to a project. Because if you've already undertaken one of these types of projects, and as we talked about it here this afternoon, it's years in the making. It's not a few months process of planning. It can span the time of years. So it's just important you recognize the time involvement up front.
Great, thank you. All right, and we are at time. We're going to wrap it up now. So again, Stacy and Russell and Kirby, thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts with everyone today. Sarah, on behalf of the Love Team, thank you for everything you've done, both to help make these projects successful and to help share the information today. And then to all of our participants today, thank you for joining us. And we really hope there's been some valuable information for you. So thank you, and everyone take care.